Hi everyone, my name is Brayden, and this is the second part of my campaign story series where I'm going to talk about my campaign that I started called Wispvalley, the Crumbling Kingdom. If you haven't watched the first video, I do suggest watching that as it will help you understand where everything has led up to this point. Because I don't want to do a whole review of the first video, so do go back and watch that if you need some context clues. But I'll go ahead and get started because the last video was a little bit long. So my characters, my players' characters, Ward, Ander, Mateus, and Tobias. We started at the end of last session with them conducting a missing persons mystery, essentially. And after some searching and some time, they found their way to this place called the Thundering Dragon Guild Hall. And at the end of the session, Ward had been conducting some mind reading techniques and discovered that the guildmaster, Norman Crosswell, was hiding something, and he learned that there were some notes in his desk that he desperately didn't want the party to read. So he told his friends to seize them, and then that started a combat encounter, which is where we ended the last session. So at the beginning of this session, we had a combat encounter. It didn't last too long. I tried to employ some interesting lair actions since they were in his, I don't want to, kind of like his favored terrain, since they're in his guild hall, and made it a little bit interesting. He had some gadgets set up. One of his lair actions was a failsafe so that he could burn the notes in his desk, which Ward cast Dispel Magic on the desk, which I hadn't actually thought of, but I allowed it to succeed because it was a really cool idea. So he was able to negate that failsafe. And then one of the other lair actions that I was able to employ were these mounted crossbow turrets that came out of the ceiling and fired at the party. And it was a little funny because one of my characters, Tobias, he's an artificer employed to the royal family. And so I told him that these devices were made by him at some point in his career. So he was a little interested in that, and that created some fun dialogue in the middle of the combat where he was apologizing to the party, saying that he didn't mean for these items to end up in somebody that they were fighting. So that was interesting. But cleverly, my party was able to lock down Norman Crossbow so that he actually couldn't leave. They were able to reduce his speed to 0 through some spell combinations, and eventually they were able to knock him out. Norman tried to destroy some of his notes. He destroyed a few, but he wasn't able to destroy the important ones. And Ward was able to retrieve those, and he ended up jumping out the window so he could keep them safe. But after Norman was defeated, they had knocked him out rather than kill him. They read the notes that he had in his desk, and it revealed that it was a typewritten letter, which is typewriters are something that I had Tobias invent for the valley, specifically for a bunch of the noble families. So they weren't able to determine who had written the letter. And they were still intent on stopping the shipment from reaching its destination, the clay that these people had retrieved from the river or the pond out near the Aegis Ravine. And they found out that this anonymous letter was sent. They're saying I need 3 wagons of this clay. And it was basically here, do the job for this amount of gold, and there was no questions asked. And essentially from that point, the party planned on putting Norman in jail for his crime. But they wanted to interrogate him first and get some more information. Oh, they also found a deposit slip where Norman had deposited the amount from the job that he was supposed to give to forewarn the missing person. So that was incriminating evidence. So Ander summoned a panther beast of his, which is a spell that I created for him. He summoned this panther of his called Wraith and sent it out to collect the guards, because that's basically his pet. And then they took Norman and themselves to Tobias's home so they could question him further. And once they got there, they woke him up and started asking him questions. Chief on their mind was what had happened to Forewarn, and then also why he had decided to attack them. So first off, they were able to learn that basically Norman had decided that he was going to keep all the money, and he knew that the water had some property to it. He didn't know what kind of property, but he decided that he would just push Forewarn in and keep the money for himself. So it kind of acted in his favor when he did that, because she didn't remember anything. But they were able to figure out that information. But he tried to reiterate that he didn't kill anyone or anything, trying to lessen his crimes. But then they started asking, well, Andrew specifically asked, why would you risk attacking the Crown Prince? And it presented an interesting opportunity for me as a DM. I had Norman reveal that he was a member of this organization called the Children of Alignment. And they don't believe that the Numitors are worthy to rule the valley. They believe that they're murderers and horrible, horrible people who have committed atrocious crimes throughout history. And they've been covering it up for years. And Ward didn't like that this information was being revealed. So when the guards came and everyone was distracted, he cast Inflict Wounds on Norman and he died. And he was able to cover it up with some good checks. But I think Ander was able to determine, or he he kind of caught on to what was happening, even though the characters weren't paying attention. Because Ward's a little bit over the top. So, Norman was dead, and the guards carted off the body. I had an opportunity to introduce another character that Andrew knew in his past, a character called Roran Buckleberry, who's the son of the general of the Wispvalley militia. And they had a little conversation. Andrew asked if he would help them on his journey, but Roran had to stay behind and help his father maintain the city, so he wasn't able to roll just high enough for that check. But after that, everyone went to their homes, go to sleep. Andrew and Ward went off together for a second, and Ward kind of told Andrew that he was keeping information from him, but it was for the greater good, and that soon he would understand everything. But he basically told him that this leader of the Children of Enlightenment, a woman called Mother Andromeda, who was someone that Norman had name dropped, saying that if they wanted more answers, they should go talk to her before he had died. Ward told Ander that they should focus on killing this woman because she was responsible for a lot of things happening, but didn't give a whole lot of context clues. So, from that point, Ander went home. He had a little bit of contemplative thoughts. Ward left him, and then on his way home, I had Ander see in the shadows, some 300 feet off in an alley, this yellow-robed figure who was a throwback to his backstory that a yellow-robed figure was responsible for his father's disappearance. So when the robed figure retreated back into the shadows, and Ander cast Thunderstep and teleported into the alley, but the figure was already gone. So he wasn't able to determine who that was. So at that point, Ander went into his home and went to sleep. And then everyone started to get up the next morning. Tobias said goodbye to his girlfriend, Yvonne. They had a little bit of back and forth, which was kind of fun. I think Tobias also made some upgrades to his armor. They took the possessions of Norman. So Tobias was able to change his artificer's armor into plate armor. And then it also allowed him to transfix the sentinel shield on the front of his armor so that he could get the benefits of it without getting the AC bonus. And so I allowed him to do that because I liked the ingenuity of that. So he did that, and now he also has a new weapon called a long spear, which is a spear with reach. That's also versatile. And then he also was able to gain a tower shield, which is a shield that I made that has a +3 armor class, and then you can't be disarmed of it because it's strapped to your entire forearm. At that point, so I had Tobias say goodbye to his girlfriend and get all of his gear together, and they were all the party was supposed to meet at the South Gate. So Tobias had that scene, and then I went to Mateus, and he had a conversation with his mother, and they chatted back and forth. and she was telling him to be safe and stuff like that, being real motherly and concerned. And then I didn't do a scene for Ward. I probably should have in hindsight. But I figured Ward was doing his own thing at the time, and my friend who was playing him didn't seem to mind. But I should have done something for him. But I neglected to, so I'll have to do something for him later on. But then I went back to Ander, and I had a couple things happen. Because firstly, he wanted to go speak with his mother before he left. And so he did, and the two of them had a conversation. And he asked his mother about his purple eyes. Because Ward the previous night, I had forgotten to mention, Ward the previous night had told him that he shouldn't have purple eyes, that his family has never had purple eyes, and there's a reason behind that. And so it's alarming that Ander does. And so he went and asked his mother what were purple eyes about, because she told him that she had had magical aid from a cleric for his birth. And she wouldn't expound upon it, but she told him that it was what she needed to do at the time. But that cleric that helped with his birth was Mother Andromeda. So there's some layers there. He was intrigued by that information, but she told him that if he wanted to know more, she couldn't tell him. He would have to ask his father once he found him. Because there's certain things that she couldn't talk about. And then Ander left her after saying goodbye and ran into his uncle Warner, and the two of them had a conversation where Warner just was making sure everything was okay with him, told him to be careful. It's the world's dangerous place, and wished him the best of luck in his travels. That he would keep everything in place in Wispvalley. And so once I had those scenes with Ander finally left the castle with all of his equipment and stuff, and met the rest of the party at the front gate. There they were joined by a few guards that they hired from the or that they gathered from the military barracks, along with Diana Bernholt. They're basically their protection racket, their convoy, to make sure that they stay safe during their travels. So, at that point, they left the town, and they have this mechanic where they have to draw a card from the deck of crowns of the Taroka deck to see if they run into one of the enemy cards that they drew. If they draw the specific card, which they did not for this length of the journey. So they didn't have to worry about that. On the way, they had a couple of interesting encounters. They found that one of the watchtowers on the road down towards Wolf's Head was abandoned. They didn't really investigate further. They would have found some additional rations, but they thought it was some sort of trap, and they decided just to continue on their journey. And then further on down, they ran into a second watchtower, and this one had been taken up by a group of goblins. Ander was the only one that was able to identify them as goblins right off the bat, and his response was to um, use a cantrip, and he took out the legs of one of the goblins. And while the goblins were freaking out, um, trying to get their comrades to come out and give them support, I had the goblins start to come out of the tower to see what was going on, and then Mateus decided to cast lightning bolt at the group, which was a little surprising, but it ended up starting a combat encounter, and they quickly dispatched of all the goblins. They left one alive to question at the end, and from that goblin, they were able to discover that the tower had been abandoned, and the goblins showed up, and they decided to just take up residence in it. And then Tobias decided to dispatch of the goblin after he had finished questioning them, which was also interesting decision. So, after that, I made a point of having Diana Bernholt because she's a paladin of nature. She had a talk with them about that. It was probably not her. It was not her first inclination to immediately start firing upon the goblins. They probably should have talked to them without just starting to murder them. Or at least I tried to get that point across. If there could have possibly been more information to find if they hadn't done that. And it was just a brief encounter. I tried to give them a different point of view because I was honestly surprised that they had decided that combat was going to go there so quickly. But that's part of the thing about Dungeons and Dragons. You can't always plan for what your players do. So I dealt with that the best I could. And they did their thing. And I adapted to it. So after that encounter, they traveled the rest of the way down the road and eventually reached Wolf's Head, where they were briskly let in. Mateus, they were all heading towards the keep to be greeted by the noble family there. Mateus decided to break off from the group to welcome lots of people of the city and get more information. And he took one of the guards with him, Kevin. And so I let him do that. And then the rest of the party showed up at the keep. They met they met the family that was there, the Silverfang family. And amongst those individuals were Leon, the First Lord of Wolf's Head, his brother Daimel, his sister Lorna, and her husband Wolf Whitmore. And then also there was Leon's son, Anders' brother-in-law Perrin, and also his wife Jessamine, who is the daughter of Leon. So Leon is Anders' father-in-law. And they greeted them and had a little bit of a conversation. Anders was overjoyed with seeing his wife, so he embraced her, even though she's a little bit of an introvert. So that was fun. And they had a little bit of conversation about how they were here to help. And they learned that there was an attack the day before on the city by a group of about 50 lycanthropes. And they decided that they were going to have a conversation about everything over dinner. because it was a little past midday at that point when they arrived at Wolf's Head. So, while everyone else was showed to their rooms, I switched scenes for a second to Mateus. And Mateus had ran into an encounter where he found some members of the Children of Enlightenment talking about their faith and what they knew. And he was able to gain a lot of interesting information from that. Chiefly that the Children of Enlightenment believe that the Numitors are servants of the Dark Powers, which are these malevolent entities and control the Shadowfell. And basically their position was that the Numitors were their servants and they had done horrendous things in the past, including murder of multiple people, including entire families, and they've been covering it up for years, and the people weren't privy to any of this information. So he learned that information, and then I reiterated the fact that Mother Andromeda was their leader, and she was in Devil's Horn. And he also asked what their goal was, and their goal was to dethrone the Numitors and elect a new leader. And he specifically asked whether, because he did an interesting thing where he was throwing his voice around the crowd with thaumaturgy so that he could hide his particular presence. I should have rolled perception to see if they noticed him, but in the moment I didn't think of it, so that's fine. But he asked who they wanted to be leader, and they said that it should be an election designed by the people. And he asked did they intend for it to be Mother Andromeda, and they reiterated that Mother Andromeda did not wish to become Lord, but she would take the duty if it was upon her. And then he also learned that Mother Andromeda is a cleric of the Raven Queen. So there was a bunch of information to be gathered from there. And I think the player started to connect some dots, particularly Anders' character. Not that he knew the information, but the player playing him I think he was able to connect some dots there. And I could see my friend who's playing Ward kind of clenching up a little bit because there was a lot of information to be revealed, and you can see that the threads are starting to unravel. But after that, Mateus, after getting all that information, he headed to the keep. And then I switched for a brief moment to Ander and Jessamine after some marital activities. They were having a conversation in their bedroom because they hadn't seen each other in a month. And Ander was telling her about all the stuff that he had learned about how there was something different about him, that he was under the impression that he, well, first off, was special, but that he wasn't who he thought he was, and there was stuff about him that he didn't know, and that stuff could potentially change the person he was. And so I tried to look at this from Jessamine's point of view, because she's much in love with Ander and respects him. She's also a hardened warrior. And she's really only soft and open with Ander. So I took the opportunity for her to give him some advice. And she told him that just because there is information that he didn't know about himself didn't make him a different person than he already was. Whatever the information that he was going to learn about himself, this doesn't change the person that he is, it just gives him more context. And his character wouldn't change from this. He was still going to be the person that he was always meant to be. Basically, I tried to throw across this idea that she was telling him that just because he learned something that he wasn't who he thought he was didn't change the person that he was. So just because he was going to learn things about himself that he didn't know, that would not change his character. And he was still going to be the same person no matter what. That these things that had been kept from him, this additional information, it wasn't going to change the fundamentals of his character. It was just new information that he would have to process. He would still be the same person, though. And I think I got that message across rather well because he nodded and he seemed to understand what I was saying to him. And then they had a little bit of a back and forth, some jokes and stuff. And then I went ahead and ended the session there because when we start off next time we play, they're going to talk a little bit about the broader things that are happening in Wolf's Head with the First Lord Leon Silverfang over dinner. And I need a little bit more time to prep a little bit for that. And then I knew that could become a longer scene. So I decided to end the session there, and we were going to continue next time we played. So that was session 2 of my campaign, and there is a lot of interesting secrets revealed. I think the story is starting to progress further. People are starting to catch on to some of the inner workings of the campaign. Not the whole picture by any means. They're catching on to this one facet of the campaign, this one secret, and things are starting to be revealed to them, which is interesting. It's catching their interest, and I think that they're probably gonna go to Devil's Horn after they're done here in Wolf's Head. But now that the session's over, I'll have to continue all that in the next one. So thank you everyone that watches this video. If you like what I'm doing and you want to support me, you can check out my Patreon right here. I do a bunch of homebrew Dungeons & Dragons content on there, and I have 3 different tiers, so and each tier has different things that I offer. So if you're interested in that and want a bunch of new options for your Dungeons & Dragons campaigns, feel free to check it out. I will do a video talking about my Patreon. I plan on releasing that this week before the weekend, so keep an eye out for that. But next time I will do a part 3 of this as soon as we have the next session. So keep an eye out for that if you're enjoying it. And thank you everyone for watching. I appreciate your likes, and I will catch you all later. Peace.